Hi, it's Stephanie Apple, and today I'm going to show you how I made 60 greeting cards out of all of these awesome gel prints. So I had a friend that was throwing a baby shower and she wanted to order special thank you cards that went along with her baby's theme. And so we had wonderful green leaf prints that we were working from. And so I took all of these gel prints and I had a ton of fun and turned them into beautiful greeting cards so that she could send thank yous to her guests. And wow, look at all of those. I can't believe I did it. It did not take nearly as long as you might think. And I started with my square gel print. And so I believe that's an 8x8. And of course, I always start with liquid gloves to protect my hands from the paint. And then I broke out, I think, every tube of green paint that I own. And I started by pulling out a bunch of pages of mixed media paint and then grabbed interference green to go along with the green paints. That helps give it shimmer without changing the tint. And I took a full book of mixed media paper and just took the spiral binding off and set all of the sheets to the side. And with this particular dimension, I'm able to get at least two greeting cards per page. And so I was able to start by making those backgrounds. So I am just pressing it down here on the print with just some green and interference green mixed together, and that will get me started with a really bright background. I normally do a lighter background, but I knew for this particular project it was all about monochromatic green design, but I still wanted it to have some good shimmer to it as always. So that is some iridescent fine pearl. And so I'm mixing that in with the green this time to give me a slightly lighter background. And then I'm going to make another one. What's so great about acrylic paint when you're gel pressing is it dries really fast. So these two prints are probably going to overlap just a little bit on the background. And that's not a big deal because really the other print had probably already dried that quickly. And then you can see that I have a pretty continuous print across with a little bit of overlap, and that print will be ready to go when it's time for me to add a layer of stencils. So I just keep going on this path and print a bunch of backgrounds, and then I will get to my stenciling. The backgrounds are complete, so it's time to start adding layers. And so I've grabbed a stencil and I am ready to add some different colors. I am keeping it in the same family, but adding maybe a little bit more yellowish tan tones and going to keep the gold in there too. So I grabbed an iridescent gold or interference gold fine. And I didn't realize just how quickly that can come out of the tube. So I spilled some overboard and oh no, that can't happen. We are not about to waste any paint today. So I was in the kitchen and I grabbed a plastic knife to kind of scoop that paint back up and revive it and make sure that it was able to be repurposed on future gel prints. I don't like to waste paint if at all possible. So there, now I'm swirling it around, and I think this is going to be kind of neat, giving it a dynamic look when I press the stencil down and then layer it on top of the background. It is different than the bright green background that I originally started with. So I'm just taking one of these backgrounds. They're not perfect. They're kind of blotchy. They're okay. I like how they look, and I know that when I layer the leaves on top of it, it's going to kind of give an organic feel. And so I'll press it down, make sure that my fingers can tell that the paper has gotten all the way through to the gel plate. I don't want to have any gaps in the stencils if I can help it. And voila. So then I'll pick that up, and then I'll go ahead and pick up the stencil really right away and get ready to make a second print with the paint that was underneath the stencil. And so I grabbed a different sheet for that and pressed it down and picked up the design there. So it's, when you hear me say that I'm making, 60 greeting cards, that may sound daunting, but when you think about the fact that you can get so much printed from such little effort, it's really rewarding and kind of fun also to experiment. The whole project took me a handful of hours. The gel printing itself, maybe, 2 hours or so to get everything done. And I work pretty fast. I don't overthink it at all, of course. So I'm just continuing to add some paint, and then I'm going to add my stencil back down and continue to move forward with some really awesome layers. On some of the cards, I decided to add even more contrast. So this is a darker blue that I pulled out to add to the prints. And so I'm not going to go straight dark blue. I still mix it with the green and a little bit of that iridescent that I'm making a big mess with. And when I swirl that all together, it gives me some more contrast on top of the green so that some of the greeting cards have a little bit more variety to them. Wow, check out all of those prints on my drying rack, ready to be cut down. This is my favorite part, to take all of the prints and hold them in my hands after they've dried and trim them. And there's a lot of usable white paper left that I will definitely use for a different project. There's one of my cleanup prints. I won't use that for this project, but it is beautiful and I will set it to the side for something different. But here I can tell that I'm definitely going to get at least 2 greeting cards from each of these prints. Because of that overlap, I think it's really just going to be 2 greeting cards, and that's going to allow me to be choosy with each card, because it's an 8x8 print, but I'm only going to need 4.25 by 5 or 4 by 5.25 is what I'll cut it down to. And so it's larger than that. So I'll be able to actually pick what part of the design I want, and then the rest will be scrap for a different project or trash. And I like that because, you know, it gives me the ability to cut off anything that maybe I didn't like and create the absolute best design for my client. know this is a longer video, but I really wanted to show you, first of all, just how easy it is to make a bigger batch of greeting cards. I think a lot of people find it intimidating and may make just one. But if you've got your supplies out, you might as well make more. And you'll see as it gets closer to the holidays, I will show you how I crank out lots of greeting cards. And so this is my process, and it's actually pretty relaxing and enjoyable. And then I also wanted you to see just how much variety I got. One stencil, right? That was it. I used one stencil. But each of these greeting cards, because of the color combinations and how, wet the stencil was, or how much paint I used or applied, they all turned out different. And so when my client gives these greeting cards to, family and friends, they're going to love that they got a unique piece of art and feel really special, because they're not just something that was sublimated or printed in a factory. They were hand created, and you could tell that from the texture. Almost done cutting them down, and then I'll stack them all up here so I can see that I've got them all done, and I'll make a couple extra just in case I have any mistakes along the way. But I love the way that texture looks. And again, the uniqueness of each greeting card really shows through as I'm giving you some close-ups with the camera. And these are just a handful of my favorites that I pulled from these prints. Who knew that you could get so much variety from one stencil and just some layers in a handful of monochromatic tones? It really is pretty neat. And I can see this being used for thank you cards or any other type of greeting card. So speaking of the greeting, I'll pull out my Misty, the most incredible stamping tool, and I have a sentiment that says sending sunshine your way, along with my favorite Ranger archival ink. And I got to work printing all of these prints. And so now that I have them all stacked up on the circles that I cut out with my Big Shot die cut, it'll be time to go ahead and assemble the cards. And I always just, get my supplies ready to go so that this process isn't too difficult. And for the adhesive, I love the Tombow Extreme. And I went through, maybe 4 different packs of Tombow Extreme refills to do these cards, but totally worth it, because I know that these will hold up in the mail and I won't have any issues with the edges or the corners curling up. And so I'll just show you an example of one of them. I'm not going to make you sit through me assembling all 60, but it's relatively quick. Put a little bit of tape on the back, all the way around the edges, and a little bit in the middle too. And then I place it so that I have a little bit of a white border surrounding the gel print, and that gives it a nice finished look. And then I'll grab these circles, and I have some double-sided foam tape and just some scissors that I use specifically for that foam tape, because the tape will make your scissors a little dingy. And I'll put maybe 3 pieces of the foam tape on the back of that white sentiment so that it has a little bit of lift. And then I'll put it on the lower right corner of the greeting card. I like the sentiment to be a little bit offset. Honestly, that's a great trick if you are not about measuring, like I am not about measuring. Doing your greeting offset instead of centered will help you keep from driving yourself crazy when it's time to line things up. And I think it is visually appealing too, to not have your focal point always right in the center. So next up, here we go. We're going to assemble the card. And then I'll show you an example of the finished product. So smooth it out. There we go. Sending sunshine your way. Looks really awesome. And you can see that shimmer on the background as I'm pulling it a little bit closer. And the gold interference, I think, is what I used on that one. Before I completed these, though, let me take you back in time. There were some holes around the sentiment. And so I did use my tonic tool to help punch out each of those holes. That was pretty time consuming. So again, that's a project for in front of the TV, but it's worth it, right? So these greeting cards turned out absolutely awesome. And I added a finishing touch by putting my logo stamped on the back. And of course, had to take some great pictures. I encourage you to use your supplies, and maybe next time you're thinking about making a greeting card, make a couple, make several to send to family and friends. They'll really appreciate it and enjoy getting those in the mail. And I would love it if you would like this video and subscribe to my channel.